I pretended I knew nothing while my fiancée cheated with her ex, smiled through wedding plans, let her think I was blind, and waited patiently until the perfect day to reveal everything in front of everyone. The notification arrived on my phone while I was reviewing the final details with the event planner. It was a mention on Instagram. Valeria, my treacherous fiancée of 5 years, had just posted a photo sitting on Rodrigo Fuentes' lap, her ex-boyfriend, with a caption that said exactly that, saying goodbye to the love of my life. The image showed her arms around his neck, her lips near his cheek, smiling with the same smile she had given me the night before when she told me she loved me. The planner kept talking about the floral arrangement while I held the phone with trembling hands. Behind us, in the Corona Real event hall, workers were arranging chairs for 200 guests. The invitations were already sent. The wedding dress was hanging in her apartment. The rings were stored in my safe, and my treacherous fiancé had just publicly declared that another man was the love of her life. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I simply looked up at the planner and said in a calm voice, "Cancel everything right now." He blinked in confusion, but something in my expression made him nod without questions. What no one knew yet, not even Valeria with all her arrogance, was that I'd known the truth about her relationship with Rodrigo for 3 months and had prepared a perfect revenge that I was about to execute. I'm Sebastian Morales, 31 years old, a civil engineer with my own construction company. I met Valeria 5 years ago at an architecture conference where she was working as a public relations specialist for one of the sponsors. It was love at first sight, or so I thought. She was 26 then, with long brown hair, piercing green eyes, and a contagious laugh that lit up any room. She was charismatic, sociable, and seemed genuinely interested in my work and my dreams. During our first 2 years together, we built what I thought was a solid relationship based on trust and shared projects. Valeria introduced me to her family, her mother Patricia, her father Ernesto, and her younger sister Daniela. They all welcomed me with open arms. I did the same with my family, my widowed mother Carmen, my older sister Andrea, and my younger brother Felipe. Family dinners became a tradition. We talked about the future, about children, about growing old together. I proposed a year and a half ago on a trip to the mountains we both loved. I rented a cabin with a view of the valley. I prepared a dinner under the stars and knelt with a diamond ring I had spent 6 months designing specifically for her. Valeria cried. She said yes 1,000 times, and that night she promised we would be happy forever. We started planning the canceled wedding immediately. The first few months of preparation were exciting. Valeria immersed herself in every detail. The venue, the decor, the menu, the guest list. I focused on securing our financial stability, expanding my company to give her the life she deserved. I worked long hours, traveled frequently to supervise projects, but I always came home to her. I trusted Valeria completely. I never checked her phone, never questioned her outings with friends, never doubted her word. That blind trust began to crack 4 months ago. It was something small at first. Valeria started casually mentioning Rodrigo Fuentes in conversations. Rodrigo says that restaurant is good. Rodrigo recommends this brand of wine. Rodrigo thinks we should consider this song for the first dance. At first I didn't think anything of it. I knew Rodrigo had been her boyfriend during college. A relationship that ended 7 years ago when he moved to Europe for a master's degree. I thought they had simply resumed a casual friendship, but the mentions became more frequent. Valeria spent more time on her phone smiling at messages she didn't share with me. She started going out more often with the girls, coming back late smelling of a men's cologne that wasn't mine. When I asked her directly if she was talking to Rodrigo, she looked at me with innocent eyes and said, "He's just an old friend, love. Don't be jealous, it doesn't suit you." The real revelation came 3 months ago. I had returned early from a business trip to Monterrey because a meeting was canceled. I decided to surprise Valeria at her apartment with her favorite food from an Italian restaurant that was far away, but that she adored. I had a key to her place, so I walked right in calling her name. The apartment was empty, but her laptop was open on the dining room table. I'm not the kind of person who snoops on other people's devices, but the screen showed an open WhatsApp web conversation, and the name at the top was Rodrigo, my love, with a heart emoji. I didn't want to read. I really tried not to, but my eyes caught fragments. "I miss you so much. These weeks without seeing you have been torture. I wish I didn't have to pretend with Sebastian for now." My stomach twisted. I sat in front of the laptop and with trembling hands began to read from the beginning of the conversation. What I discovered was devastating and perfectly calculated. Rodrigo had returned from Europe 6 months ago and contacted Valeria immediately. According to their messages, they had never stopped loving each other. The relationship between them resumed immediately, physically and emotionally. But there was a problem. Rodrigo was still establishing himself professionally after years abroad. He didn't have the financial resources to offer Valeria the lifestyle she desired. I did. In explicit messages, Valeria explained her plan to Rodrigo: marry me, secure her financial and social position, and then divorce me in a few years when Rodrigo was better established. Sebastian is reliable and stupid, she wrote. He'll never suspect anything. He'll give me a spectacular canceled wedding, a beautiful house, and stability. You give me time to secure everything, and then we can be together without financial worries. Rodrigo replied. And what if he finds out? Valeria wrote, he won't. He's so in love and so busy with his company that he doesn't even notice when I come home late smelling like you. He's the perfect man for this, hardworking, trusting, and too noble to question my lies. I read months of messages, their secret meetings in hotels while I was traveling for work, their mockery of my naivety, their detailed plans on how to maximize the prenuptial agreement my lawyer was preparing, their conversations about faking it during the honeymoon in Greece, which I had already paid for completely. Rodrigo even joked, "Enjoy your free trip, love. Send me pictures of the places we'll visit together someday." The most recent message was from that morning. Just 15 more days of this farce, and I'll have his last name and access to his money. Then the countdown to our perfect revenge will begin. I sat in front of that laptop for 2 hours, reading every word, taking every screenshot, saving every piece of evidence in an encrypted folder in the cloud. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was strategic, financial, and deeply cruel. Valeria didn't love me. She probably never had. I was simply a means to an end, a stepping stone to the life she wanted to share with another man. When I heard her key in the door, I quickly closed the laptop and acted as if I had just arrived. Valeria walked in radiant, kissing me with the same lips that had probably been on Rodrigo's hours before. What a surprise, love. I thought you were coming back tomorrow. I smiled and handed her the Italian food. That night, I feigned normalcy while planning my next move. For the next 3 months, I became a consummate actor. I continued to be the attentive and loving boyfriend. I continued with the canceled wedding plans, approving every expense, every detail. I hired the best event planner in the city to create the most spectacular celebration possible. I booked the Corona Real Hall, the most exclusive and expensive. I hired musicians, renowned photographers, a 5-star catering service. The total budget reached 350,000 pesos, every cent paid in advance. But simultaneously, I took strategic measures. First, I consulted with my trusted lawyer, Mr. Mendez, showing him all the evidence I had collected. He drafted documents that would completely protect my assets in case of marriage and subsequent divorce. He also prepared a civil lawsuit for emotional and financial fraud, ready to be filed at the right moment. Second, I hired a private investigator who documented every encounter between Valeria and Rodrigo. Photographs of them entering and leaving hotels, videos of their caresses in secluded restaurants, audio recordings where they planned their future together. The evidence accumulated meticulously. Third, and this was the most important, I maintained a perfect performance. Valeria couldn't suspect that I knew the truth. Every night, I told her I loved her. Every morning, I sent her romantic messages. I even organized a modest bachelor party with my close friends, where everyone congratulated me for finding the perfect woman, if only they knew. Last week, 7 days before the supposed canceled wedding, I decided it was time to begin the final phase of my perfect revenge. During a family dinner at Valeria's parents' house, where everyone was excitedly discussing the final preparations, I received an important call from my private investigator. I excused myself and went out to the garden. "Mr. Morales," he said in a low voice, "I have something you need to see urgently. Rodrigo just booked plane tickets for himself and Miss Valeria departing 3 days after your wedding date. Destination, Cancun. A week at an all-inclusive resort, and there's more. I've intercepted communications where they discuss how she plans to fake a family emergency to be absent during that week, leaving you alone during what should be your honeymoon." The public humiliation they were planning was even worse than I imagined. Not only would they use me financially, but they would leave me alone and humiliated while they enjoyed a vacation indirectly paid for by me. I returned to the dining room where the family was chatting happily. Valeria's mother, Patricia, poured me more wine while her father Ernesto patted me on the back saying, "Soon you'll officially be part of this family, son." Daniela, Valeria's younger sister, was showing pictures of the bridesmaid dress, and Valeria looked at me with that perfectly rehearsed smile, taking my hand while planning my public humiliation. That was the night I decided exactly how and when I would execute my plan. It wouldn't be private, it wouldn't be discreet, it would be public, devastating, and absolutely justified. And now, standing in the Corona Reel Hall with that Instagram photo burning on my screen, the moment had arrived. Valeria had just made the final mistake, posting that picture in broad daylight, 15 days before our canceled wedding, with a shamelessness that revealed her absolute certainty that I was too stupid to realize. I immediately called Mr. Mendez. "It's time," I said, "simply activate the plan." "Understood," he replied. "The documents will be presented to the judge in 2 hours. Are you sure you want to proceed with the public option?" "Completely sure." Then I called my investigator. "I need you to deliver all the photographic and video evidence to the people on my list." Now, my next call was to my mother. Her voice sounded excited. "Sebastian, I was just looking at my dress for the wedding. Is everything okay with the final preparations, Mom?" I said in a controlled voice. "I need you to gather Andrea and Felipe. Come to my apartment in an hour. There's something important you need to know." The tone of my voice immediately alerted her. "What happened, son?" "You'll know soon. Just trust me." After hanging up, I sat in one of the elegant chairs in the Corona Reel Hall and looked around. This place that was supposed to witness my supposed marital happiness would now be the stage for something completely different. I took out my phone and began to write a message that would change everything. The event planner returned with cancellation papers. "Mr. Morales, I'm very sorry for whatever is happening. Is there anything else I can do?" "Yes," I replied. "I want you to contact everyone on the guest list. Tell them the event is still scheduled for 15 days from now. Same place, same time, but the purpose has changed. It will no longer be a canceled wedding. It will be a public presentation of evidence, and everyone is cordially invited to witness it." His eyes widened. "A presentation of evidence." "Exactly. Valeria wants a public celebration. I'll give her one, just not the one she's expecting." My phone began to vibrate incessantly. Valeria was calling me, her parents were calling me, her sister was sending me messages asking if I'd seen the Instagram post. I ignored everything. Instead, I posted my own status update on social media. "To all our friends and family, the event on the 25th of this month at the Corona Reel Hall will take place as planned. I expect to see you all. It will be a memorable celebration, I can guarantee that." The comments started pouring in immediately. Some confused, others worried, many asking what was happening. Some had seen Valeria's post and wondered if it was a bad joke. I let the speculation grow. I finally answered Valeria's call. Her voice sounded forcefully casual. "Love, did you see my post? It was a silly joke with Rodrigo. You know how he is with his sense of humor. It doesn't mean anything. A joke," I repeated without emotion. "Yes, love, I already deleted it. Some people took it the wrong way, but you know me. You know I only love you. I'll see you at home," I said and hung up. During the next hour, pieces of my perfect revenge began to move. Mr. Mendez filed a request for a financial protection order on all my assets with the judge, citing attempted marital fraud with attached evidence. The judge, after reviewing the evidence, immediately approved it. My investigator personally delivered packages of evidence to key people: Valeria's parents, her sister Daniela, my mother, my sister Andrea, and several close friends of both of us. Each package contained photographs, message transcripts, and a detailed timeline of Valeria's infidelity. I hired a lawyer specializing in defamation to ensure every step I took was legal and wouldn't expose me to countersuits. He reviewed all my evidence and confirmed, "You have a solid case. Everything you plan to do is within legal limits, especially since she made her relationship with the other man public first." When I arrived at my apartment, my family was already waiting. The expression on their faces showed they had already opened the evidence packages. My mother had tears in her eyes. Andrea looked furious. Felipe, normally relaxed, was clenching his fists. How long have you known? Andrea asked. 3 months. And you didn't tell us anything. My mother approached, taking my face in her hands. You've been carrying this alone for 3 months. I needed to be sure. I needed to have all the evidence. I needed a perfect plan so she couldn't manipulate the situation or play the victim. Felipe stood up. What do you need us to do? I explained my plan in detail. The public presentation that would take place in exactly 15 days, the legal annulment that would be processed simultaneously, the civil lawsuits that would be filed, the complete exposure of Valeria and Rodrigo before everyone who knew them. It's brutal, Andrea commented. But after what she did to you, it's fair. That night, Valeria arrived at my apartment looking worried. She had tried to call me 17 times. Sebastian, love, what's going on? People are asking me strange questions. Your mom isn't answering my calls. Daniela says my parents want to talk to me urgently. Did you tell them something about my post? I looked her directly in the eyes. Those green eyes that I once thought reflected true love. Why don't you ask your parents? It seems they have something important to discuss with you. What are you talking about? Her performance was impressive, genuine concern, innocent confusion. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I probably would have believed every word. Go home. Valeria, talk to your family. I'll see you in 15 days at the Corona Real Hall. I hope you're ready for the celebration. Sebastian, you're scaring me. Good night, Valeria. I walked her to the door and closed it firmly behind her. Through the peephole, I saw her stand there for several minutes, clearly confused and scared. Finally, she left. My phone exploded with messages throughout the night. Valeria wrote to me 32 times. Her messages evolved from feigned confusion to genuine panic. Sebastian, my parents showed me some horrible photos. Someone is setting Rodrigo and me up. They're doctored. You have to believe me later. Please, love, I need to talk to you. This is a terrible misunderstanding. And finally, at 3 in the morning, I can't believe you'd distrust me after 5 years together. I thought you knew me better. I ignored every message. Instead, I focused on perfecting the final details of my perfect revenge. Mr. Mendez sent me confirmation that the legal documents were in order. My private investigator informed me that Rodrigo had hastily canceled the tickets to Cancun that same afternoon, apparently alerted by Valeria that something was wrong. The next morning at 7 a.m., I received a call from Ernesto, Valeria's father. His voice sounded tense. None of the jovial, fatherly tone he always used with me. Sebastian, we need to talk. Patricia and I reviewed the material you sent us. We want to hear your side before drawing conclusions. My side is documented in the evidence you received. I replied calmly. Photographs with dates and times, verifiable text messages, audio recordings, hotel records, flight itineraries. There are no sides, Mr. Ernesto, there are only facts. A heavy silence. Valeria says someone is framing her, that Rodrigo is just a friend, that those photos are taken out of context. Then, ask her about the trip to Cancun scheduled for 3 days after our canceled wedding. Ask her about the messages where she calls me stupid and reliable in the same paragraph. Ask her about her detailed plans for divorce and division of assets. It's all documented, sir, with dates, times, and full context. I heard his ragged breathing on the other end of the line. How long have you known? 3 months. And you went ahead with the preparations? Why? Because I wanted to make sure that when this moment came, I had irrefutable evidence. And because I wanted Valeria to have the chance to stop, to confess the truth to me, to show even a shred of genuine remorse. She never did. Until yesterday, she was still planning to marry me while maintaining her relationship with Rodrigo. Another silence. The canceled wedding is canceled, I suppose. The canceled wedding as such, yes, but the event at the Corona Real Hall is still on. I hope to see you and Patricia there. I think everyone deserves to know the full truth about what's been happening, Sebastian. His voice cracked slightly. I'm so sorry. If this is true, I have no words to express my shame. Patricia is devastated. We thought we knew our daughter. We all thought we knew her, sir. After hanging up, I got ready to go to the office. My construction company had several ongoing projects that required supervision, and I wasn't going to let personal drama affect my work. That discipline, that focus on keeping my professional life separate from my emotional chaos, had been my salvation during these 3 months of discovery and planning. At the office, my personal assistant, Carolina, immediately noticed something was wrong. She had been working with me for 4 years and knew my face better than anyone. Engineer Morales, are you okay? The canceled wedding will not take place, I said directly. Please, update the human resources records. My marital status will remain single indefinitely. Her eyes widened, but she had the professionalism not to ask questions. Of course, engineer. Is there anything else you need? Yes, I need you to book the main conference room in our building for 14 days from now. Open invitation for all staff who wish to attend. It will be an important presentation on corporate and personal values, something I think we can all learn from. Carolina nodded, clearly confused, but obedient. What she didn't know yet was that my presentation wouldn't just be for family and friends. I wanted the people I worked with daily to also understand why the values of honesty and integrity were so important to me. I wouldn't give specific names in that corporate presentation, but the message would be clear. For the next few hours, I immersed myself in reviewing architectural plans and calls with contractors. Work was my refuge, the place where everything made logical and mathematical sense. A column supports a certain weight, or it doesn't. A bridge is built correctly, or it collapses. There are no gray areas, no deceptions, no betrayals, just physics, engineering, and predictable consequences. At noon, my sister Andrea arrived at the office unannounced. She walked into my private office with 2 coffees and a determined expression. We need to talk about your public humiliation plan. It's not public humiliation, I corrected, taking one of the coffees. It's public disclosure of verifiable facts. Sebastian, I understand you're furious. I am too. That woman used you in the most vile way possible. But are you sure that exposing her publicly is the best option? You could just cancel everything discreetly, cut contact, and move on with your life, and allow her to control the narrative. I shook my head. Right now, Valeria is already working on her version of events. She's telling everyone I'm a jealous and paranoid boyfriend who misinterpreted an innocent friendship, that the photos are taken out of context, that I'm the bad guy in this story for not trusting her. If I don't present the evidence publicly, that will become the accepted truth. Andrea took a seat, studying me carefully. There's something more. This isn't just about protecting your reputation. This is personal. Of course it's personal, I admitted. She called me stupid. She said I was too noble to question her lies. She meticulously planned to use my love, my trust, and my money to build a life with another man. She was going to leave me alone during our honeymoon, Andrea. She was going to fake a family emergency and spend that week with Rodrigo in Cancun, while I waited in Greece wondering what I had done wrong. The cruelty of that plan deserves a proportional response. Proportional, Andrea repeated. Exposing it to 200 people is proportional. She chose to make our relationship public when she posted that photo with Rodrigo. She decided our private life was material for social media. I'm just following her example, but with an ingredient she never considered. The truth, my sister sighed. Mom is worried. She says she's never seen you so cold. I'm not cold, I'm focused. There's a difference. And then what? After your big reveal, after everyone knows what Valeria did, then what? Will that heal what she broke? That question stopped me. The truth was I hadn't thought much beyond the execution of my perfect revenge. What would come next? Would I feel better? Could I finally move on? I had no answers, but I knew I needed to do this. I needed Valeria and Rodrigo to face real consequences for their calculated actions. I don't know, Andrea, but I know that if I don't do this, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I'd had the courage to defend myself. My sister reached her hand across the desk, taking mine. Then, do it, but promise me that when it's all over you'll let someone help you heal, because perfect revenge might give you momentary satisfaction, but it won't give you peace. That afternoon I received an unexpected visit. Daniela, Valeria's younger sister. She was 23, studying veterinary medicine, and had always been genuinely kind to me. She arrived at my office with red, swollen eyes from crying. Sebastian, I need to talk to you, please. I invited her in. Carolina brought us water and discreetly closed the door on her way out. Daniela sat on the edge of the chair, wringing a handkerchief in her hands. I saw the evidence you sent to my parents, she began in a trembling voice. I didn't want to believe it. Valeria is my older sister. I admired her. I thought you two had the perfect relationship, but the photos, the messages, there's no way to deny it, is there? No, I said softly. There isn't. I talked to her last night. I told her to admit the truth, to ask for your forgiveness, to try to fix things even if it was impossible. Do you know what she told me? Fresh tears ran down her cheeks. She told me you were the problem, that you were controlling and jealous, that Rodrigo was just a friend, and that you had hired someone to fake evidence because you couldn't stand her having her own life. She looked me straight in the eye and lied shamelessly. I'm sorry, Daniela. Don't you apologize. I should be apologizing. For months, Valeria was betraying you, and I saw nothing. I was so excited for the canceled wedding, so happy my sister was marrying someone as good as you. And it was all a lie. You're not responsible for your sister's actions. Daniela wiped her tears. My parents are devastated. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad locks himself in his study and won't talk to anyone. And Valeria is still acting like she's the victim. She says everyone is betraying her, that no one trusts her, that her own family is turning their back on her instead of supporting her. And what are you going to do? I already did it. I told her I don't want to see her until she admits the truth and properly apologizes to you. She told me I was being dramatic, that everyone is overreacting, that this will blow over in a few weeks and we'll be a happy family again. Daniela shook her head. But it's not true. Nothing will ever be the same. No, I agreed. It won't. The event you're planning at the Corona Real Hall. Are you really going to expose everything publicly? Yes. Can I ask you why? Not to judge you, but to understand. You already canceled the canceled wedding. You already have all the legal evidence you need. Why make it public? I considered my answer carefully, because Valeria calculated every step of her betrayal based on the belief that I was too good, too trusting, too noble to confront her. She completely underestimated me, and I want her, Rodrigo, and everyone who thought it was acceptable to treat me this way to understand that actions have consequences, not just legal or financial, but social. Daniela nodded slowly. I'll be there at the event, not to support Valeria, but to support you. You deserve for someone from her family to acknowledge what she did to you. After Daniela left, I stared out my office window at the city. 14 days. In 14 days, everyone would know the truth. The anticipation was almost physical, a constant tension in my chest that wouldn't go away no matter how much I worked or distracted myself. That night, upon returning to my apartment, I found Valeria waiting in the hallway. She looked terrible, no makeup, disheveled hair, wrinkled clothes. Nothing like the perfectly composed woman she always projected in public. Sebastian, please, she begged as soon as she saw me. Just give me 5 minutes to explain. There's nothing to explain, Valeria. Yes, there is. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. Rodrigo and I are friends. Those photos. We were celebrating him getting a new job. The messages were silly jokes that were read out of context. I would never betray you. I love you. I looked at her with genuine curiosity. Did she really believe her own lies, or was she just so arrogant that she thought she could manipulate me even now? The tickets to Cancun were also a joke. I asked calmly. Her face paled. How? How do you know about that? I know everything, Valeria. Every hotel encounter, every message where you planned our divorce, every conversation where you mocked my supposed stupidity, every detail of your perfect financial revenge. I know everything. Then, let me explain the context. No, my voice sounded harsher than I intended. I'm not giving you another chance to lie. I'll see you in 14 days at the Corona Real Hall. Bring whoever you want. Say whatever you want. But the full truth will be revealed, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Sebastian, please. If you do that, you'll destroy my life. You plan to destroy mine. I responded. The difference is my methods are honest. This is cruel revenge. No, Valeria, this is justice. There's a difference. I took out my keys and opened my apartment door. Before closing it, I turned to her one last time. By the way, that Instagram post you made, where you called Rodrigo the love of your life, thanks for that. It made it much easier to explain to people why I'm taking these measures. I closed the door, leaving her in the hallway. I heard her sobbing on the other side, gently knocking on the door, begging me to let her in. After 20 minutes, she finally gave up and left. The following days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Mr. Mendez finalized all the legal documents. My investigator delivered the final package of evidence, including bank records showing how Valeria had been using my supplementary credit card to buy expensive gifts for Rodrigo. Perfumes, watches, designer clothes, all charged to my account. The event planner at Corona Real confirmed that everything was ready. Instead of a romantic canceled wedding decoration, the hall was set up like an auditorium. A giant screen, a professional audio system, theater-style seating. 200 confirmed guests, some confused about why they were still attending if the canceled wedding was canceled. Others, who had received previews of the evidence, confirmed their attendance with messages of support. My mother tried one last time to make me reconsider. Son, I understand your pain and your fury, but are you prepared for the consequences of doing this so publicly? Valeria might retaliate. She might accuse you of harassment, of defamation, of anything. Let her try, I responded. I have recordings where she admits everything. I have forensic evidence of the messages. I have witnesses, hotel documentation, financial records. If she wants to fight legally, she'll lose. And she knows it. I'm not worried about you losing legally, my mother said softly. I'm worried about you losing emotionally. Perfect revenge consumes, Sebastian. I don't want you to become a bitter person. I'm not going to let that happen, Mom. But this is something I need to do, not just for me, but for anyone else Valeria might use like this in the future. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. 2 days before the event, Rodrigo finally tried to contact me. He sent me a long WhatsApp message. Sebastian, I know you have reasons to be upset. I know what happened between Valeria and me was wrong, but it wasn't planned. We reconnected, and old feelings came back. We didn't want to hurt you. Things just happened. If you want to hit me, yell at me, whatever, I'll take it. But please, don't destroy Valeria's life with a public humiliation. She doesn't deserve that. I read the message 3 times, incredulous at the audacity. Things just happened, as if booking hotels, planning trips, and conspiring about my money were spontaneous accidents. As if 3 months of calculated deceit were simply the product of uncontrollable passion, I replied with a single message. You and Valeria had months to stop, to confess the truth to me, to show even an ounce of decency. You didn't. Now face the consequences of your decisions. I'll see you tomorrow. The night before the event, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake going over every detail of the plan. The presentation was ready. A complete timeline of the betrayal with photographic evidence, message screenshots, audio recordings, and documentary records, all organized into a professional 90-minute presentation. I had invited a notary public to certify that all the documents shown were authentic and not manipulated. I hired professional cameramen to record the entire event, not to publish it, but to have a legal record of everything presented. My lawyer would be present to ensure I didn't cross any legal lines. At 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It's Patricia, Valeria's mother. Please, Sebastian, I know my daughter hurt you terribly, but she's my daughter. I beg you to reconsider exposing her like this. Let me fix this privately. I'll pay you whatever is necessary. Just please don't do this. I looked at Patricia's message for long minutes. Valeria's mother, a woman who had treated me like a son for 5 years, was begging me for mercy for her daughter. Part of me, the part that still remembered the warm family dinners and sincere conversations with her, felt a pang of guilt. But another part, the part that had spent 3 months gathering evidence of how her daughter meticulously planned to destroy my life, remained firm. I replied, Mrs. Patricia, I respect your position as a mother, but this is no longer negotiable. Valeria had countless opportunities to stop. She could have confessed the truth to me at any time during these months. Instead, she continued to lie, plan, and spend my money on her lover. Tomorrow's event will happen. I'm sorry. Her response came almost immediately. Then may God forgive you for what you're about to do. I didn't reply. The morning of the event dawned gray and cloudy, as if the weather itself reflected the emotional weight of the day. I dressed carefully. A dark suit, a conservative tie, polished shoes. I wanted to look professional, controlled, not like a man seeking emotional revenge, but like someone presenting facts with surgical precision. My family arrived at my apartment early. Mom, Andrea, and Felipe, all dressed formally, all with expressions of support mixed with concern. Are you sure about this, son? My mother asked for the umpteenth time. Completely sure. We arrived at the Corona Real Hall at 3 p.m. The event was scheduled for 5, but I needed time to verify that everything was in order. The planner met me at the entrance. Mr. Morales, everything is ready according to your specifications. The screen is operational, the audio system tested, the seats organized. The guests will start arriving in about an hour. I walked through the transformed hall, where there should have been an altar with white flowers and romantic decoration. Now there was a professional podium in front of a giant screen. The round tables for the reception had been replaced by rows of auditorium-style chairs. A technical team was adjusting the lights and testing the sound. The notary public was already present reviewing his documents. My lawyer, Mr. Mendez, was checking for the last time that every element of the presentation met legal requirements. Engineer Morales, said the lawyer approaching, I've reviewed the entire presentation again. Everything is within legal limits. The evidence is irrefutable, legally obtained, and the public presentation is justified, given that Miss Valeria made her relationship with Mr. Rodrigo public. If she tries to sue you for defamation or anything else, she has no case. Thank you, sir. At 4:30, the first guests began to arrive. Mutual friends of mine and Valeria's, clearly confused by the venue's setup. Some greeted me with supportive hugs, having received previews of the evidence. Others approached asking directly what was happening. Everything will be explained shortly, I replied uniformly. Valeria's parents arrived at 4:45. Patricia looked as if she had aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Ernesto walked with slumped shoulders, a shadow of the proud man I knew. Daniela came with them, and when our eyes met, she nodded with a small, sad smile of support. They sat in the third row without approaching to greet me. Patricia kept looking towards the entrance, clearly expecting Valeria to appear at any moment. Ernesto stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. At 4:50, when 180 of the 200 guests were already present, Valeria finally arrived. And she didn't come alone. Rodrigo was with her, his arm protectively around her shoulders. A murmur swept through the hall. Some people recognized Rodrigo from the famous Instagram post. Others were simply confused about who this man was, accompanying the supposed bride-to-be. Valeria looked defiant. She had dressed in a bright red dress, perfect makeup, impeccably styled hair. It was a statement. She wouldn't come as an ashamed victim. She would come as someone who had nothing to regret. Rodrigo, for his part, wore a dark suit and a tense expression of determination. They walked down the central aisle to the front rows. Patricia stood up immediately. Valeria, what are you doing? Why did you bring? He couldn't finish the sentence. I came to face whatever Sebastian plans to say, Valeria declared loudly, making sure multiple people heard her. And I brought Rodrigo because he's my support. Unlike my previous treacherous fiancé, Rodrigo truly loves me and is here for me. The silence that followed was absolute. All eyes moved between Valeria, Rodrigo, and me. My mother, sitting in the front row, stiffened. Andrea let out a disbelieving laugh. Felipe muttered something that sounded like, "This can't be real." I didn't react. I simply looked at my watch. 4:55. Please, everyone take a seat, I said in a clear, controlled voice. We'll begin in 5 minutes. The last guests hurried in. At exactly 5 o'clock, all 200 guests were present. The murmur of conversations filled the hall. People exchanging theories, wondering what was happening. Some clearly aware of the rumors, others completely lost. I approached the podium. Mr. Mendez stood discreetly to one side. The notary public took his designated position. The cameramen activated their equipment. I took a deep breath and tapped the microphone to test the sound. A slight tap echoed through the hall, instantly silencing all conversations. Good afternoon, everyone. I began. Thank you for coming. I know many of you are confused about why you're here. This event was originally scheduled to be my canceled wedding with Valeria Torres. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but I summoned you all anyway because there are certain truths that need to be shared publicly. Valeria stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to stand here while you defame me. Sit down, Valeria, I said firmly. Or you leave now and implicitly admit that everything I'm about to present is true. You decide. Rodrigo whispered something in her ear. She hesitated, clearly torn between her instinct to flee and her arrogance in believing she could somehow control the narrative. Finally, she sat down, crossing her arms defiantly. Before I begin, I continued. I want to introduce you to Mr. Mendez, my lawyer, who has verified that everything I'm about to present is legal and backed by verifiable evidence. Also present is a notary public who will certify the authenticity of all the documents shown. There will be no speculation or rumors, only documented facts. I paused, letting those words sink in. 3 months ago, I discovered that Valeria Torres, my treacherous fiancée of 5 years, was maintaining a romantic and physical relationship with Rodrigo Fuentes, her ex-boyfriend. What I discovered wasn't simply infidelity. It was a calculated and elaborate conspiracy to marry me, secure access to my financial resources, and then divorce me to be with Rodrigo. Several gasps echoed through the hall. The giant screen behind me lit up, showing the first piece of evidence, a time-stamped screenshot of a message between Valeria and Rodrigo. The font was large enough for everyone in the hall to read. Sebastian is reliable and stupid. He'll give me a spectacular canceled wedding, a beautiful house, and stability. You give me time to secure everything, and then we can be together without financial worries. The murmur grew. Patricia brought a hand to her mouth. Ernesto closed his eyes. Valeria stood up again. That's taken out of context. Really, I touched the remote control, and the next image appeared. Another message. He's so in love and so busy with his company that he doesn't even notice when I come home late smelling like you. He's the perfect man for this, hardworking, trusting, and too noble to question my lies. Stop, Valeria shouted. You have no right to show private conversations. Private conversations where you plan to defraud me, I replied, and yes, I do have the right, especially after you posted a public photo sitting on Rodrigo's lap, calling him the love of your life, 2 weeks before our supposed canceled wedding. The screen changed again, showing exactly that Instagram post with its date and time. Several guests who apparently hadn't seen it before reacted with visible shock. For the next 60 minutes, I continued. I'm going to present a complete timeline of this betrayal. Photographs with dates and locations, text messages verified by the notary public, hotel records, flight itineraries, charges to my credit card for gifts Valeria bought for Rodrigo, detailed plans on how to manipulate me during the marriage and the eventual divorce. I turned directly to Valeria and Rodrigo. You'll have an opportunity to respond at the end. You can stay and face the evidence, or you can leave now, but this presentation will happen with or without your presence. Valeria looked at Rodrigo, who looked remarkably pale. She slowly sat down again, but her defiant expression had been replaced by something that looked dangerously like fear. I spent the next hour presenting meticulously organized evidence. I started with the timeline. How Rodrigo returned from Europe 6 months ago. How he contacted Valeria immediately. How their relationship resumed in a matter of days. I showed photographs taken by my private investigator. Valeria and Rodrigo entering the Mirador Hotel together 6 times in 3 months. Specific dates and times, all on days when I was traveling for work. Hotel bills paid in cash by Rodrigo, but dinners at the hotel restaurant charged to my supplementary credit card that I had given to Valeria. I projected screenshots of entire conversations, not just snippets, but whole exchanges that showed the depth of their conspiracy. Detailed plans on how Valeria would feign interest in having children with me to keep the marriage seemingly stable for at least 2 years before initiating the divorce. Discussions on how to maximize the prenuptial agreement that ironically my lawyer had been preparing to protect me. Here I pointed out a particularly revealing conversation. Valeria and Rodrigo discussed my business trip to Guadalajara last week. Note the dates. The screen showed messages where Valeria said, Sebastian will be away for 3 days. We can spend the whole weekend together without worries. Rodrigo replied, I booked the suite at the hotel where we stayed the first time. I'll bring that bottle of wine you like, Valeria. Perfect. I'll tell him I'm going to a spa retreat with my friends. He never checks. I looked towards the front rows where 3 of Valeria's supposed friends were sitting. Their faces showed genuine shock. One of them, Marcella, stood up. Valeria asked me to be her alibi that weekend. She told me she was going to throw you a surprise party and needed me to lie if you asked. You used me to cover your infidelity. Valeria didn't answer, burying her face in her hands. Rodrigo remained motionless, staring at his shoes. I continued with financial evidence. Statements from my supplementary credit card showing purchases at men's stores. A brand name watch for 25,000 pesos. Designer men's perfume for 8,000 pesos. Men's clothing in a size that was clearly not mine, all purchased by Valeria, all charged to my account, all gifted to Rodrigo. Ironically, I pointed out, she also used my card to pay for several romantic breakfasts at hotels where they spent the night together. Each charge has a verifiable date, time, and location. Valeria's mother began to cry openly. Daniela was hugging her, also with tears running down her cheeks. Ernesto just stared at the screen, his face a mask of devastation and shame. Then came the part that had hurt me the most to discover. Now I want to show you something particularly cruel. The screen changed to screenshots of a conversation from 2 weeks ago. These messages are from 9 days before our supposed canceled wedding. Valeria wrote, "Just 9 more days of this farce. I have everything ready for the fake honeymoon. Rodrigo, are you still planning to do that?" Valeria, absolutely. Sebastian paid for the entire trip to Greece. I'm going to fake a family emergency on the 3rd day and take a flight to Cancun with you. We'll leave him alone in Greece while we enjoy the resort you booked. It's perfect. The hall exploded in outraged murmurs. I heard someone say, "What kind of person does that?" Another commented. "This is psychopathic, to be clear," I said, raising my voice over the noise. Valeria planned to abandon me during our honeymoon, a trip that cost 45,000 pesos completely paid for by me to spend that week with Rodrigo at a resort in Cancun. Here are Rodrigo's flight reservations for those exact dates. I projected the flight confirmations. Everything matched perfectly with what the messages described. Rodrigo finally spoke, his voice tense. That was her idea. I told her it was too cruel. I didn't want to do it. I immediately showed another message. Rodrigo wrote, "The idea of leaving him alone in Greece while you and I are on the beach is delicious. Poetic justice considering how he monopolizes your time now." Valeria replied, "I know, love. And the best part is he'll pay for his own public humiliation without even knowing it. You still say you didn't want to do it?" I asked Rodrigo directly. He didn't answer, his face completely red. I continued with more evidence. Conversations where they discussed strategies for the eventual divorce. Valeria had meticulously researched property division laws, discreetly consulted with a divorce lawyer, whose fees she also charged to my card, and planned how to maximize what she could get from me in a separation. Here I pointed out another conversation. They specifically discuss how Valeria plans to document irreconcilable differences to justify the divorce after 2 years of marriage. Notice how they calculate how much she could get based on the value of my company. The screen showed spreadsheets Valeria had created, estimates of my net worth, percentages she could claim under different divorce scenarios. She had even included notes on how to document emotional distress to increase any settlement. This, I said, addressing the entire hall, is not simply infidelity, it's premeditated fraud. It's a calculated conspiracy to manipulate my emotions, my trust, and my financial resources. For months, Valeria told me, "I love you," while planning exactly how to abandon me and strip me of everything possible. I looked directly at Valeria. Tears were now streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "Do you have anything to say?" She shook her head, unable to speak. Rodrigo tried to stand up, but seemed to think better of it and remained seated. "There's one last thing," I said. "I want everyone to understand exactly when I discovered all this and why I chose to handle it this way." The screen changed, showing a calendar marked with specific dates. I discovered the first evidence exactly 3 months and 8 days ago. From that moment until today, I have lived with this knowledge while Valeria continued to lie to me, spend my money on her lover, and plan my public humiliation. I paused, letting that information sink in. During these 3 months, I had countless opportunities to confront her privately. I could have canceled the canceled wedding discreetly, cut off contact, and moved on quietly, but I chose not to. And I want to explain exactly why I turned to Valeria and Rodrigo. 2 weeks ago, 15 days before our supposed canceled wedding, Valeria posted a photograph on Instagram sitting on Rodrigo's lap with the caption saying goodbye to the love of my life. That post was the final act of arrogance that confirmed this public presentation was necessary. The screen again showed the infamous post. Valeria was so sure I was too stupid, too trusting, too noble to find out, that she felt safe enough to post this openly. She thought that if I questioned anything, she would simply dismiss it as a joke and I would believe her as I always had. I took a document from my folder. This is a psychological analysis I requested from a professional after discovering the betrayal. It helped me understand that people like Valeria operate with the fundamental belief that they are smarter than everyone else, that they can manipulate without consequences because they deeply underestimate the people they claim to love. I looked at the audience. Many of you know me. You know I'm not vengeful by nature. I'm an engineer. I like things clear, measurable, fair, but when someone uses you so calculatingly, when they plan not only to betray you, but to publicly humiliate you while taking your money, the response must be proportional. Patricia, Valeria's mother, stood up shakily. Sebastian, please, you've made your point. My daughter made terrible mistakes, but this public humiliation, isn't it enough already? With all due respect, Mrs. Patricia, I replied, your daughter didn't make mistakes. She executed a deliberate plan for months and called me stupid in the process. This isn't gratuitous public humiliation. It's public disclosure of facts that affect everyone present who had planned to celebrate a marriage based on lies. I addressed the entire audience again. Look around you. All of you invested time, money, and emotion in what you thought. It was a celebration of true love. You bought gifts, made travel arrangements. Some of you traveled from other cities. You deserve to know why that celebration isn't going to happen. You deserve to know the true character of the people involved. A friend of mine, Roberto, stood up from the fifth row. Sebastian, he's right. I spent 3,000 pesos on a gift for them. I took days off work. If Valeria had ended this discreetly, I would have thought they just weren't compatible. I never would have known I was used as part of an elaborate sham. Others nodded. I heard murmurs of agreement throughout the hall. Now I continued. I want to talk about the legal consequences of all this. Mr. Mendez approached the podium carrying a thick folder. Good afternoon, the lawyer began in a professional voice. I have prepared several legal documents based on the evidence Engineer Morales has collected. First, a civil lawsuit against Miss Valeria Torres for emotional and financial fraud. The amount requested is 500,000 pesos, equivalent to all expenses incurred for the canceled wedding, plus damages. Valeria let out a choked cry. I don't have that money. Precisely the point, replied Mr. Mendez. We have also filed for preventive attachment orders on any property in her name and have requested the freezing of bank accounts until the case is resolved. Rodrigo finally stood up. This is excessive. She made a judgment error, but she's not a criminal. It's not a judgment error, I corrected firmly. It's fraud. And Mr. Lawyer, could you explain the part involving Mr. Fuentes? The lawyer nodded. We have also filed a lawsuit against Rodrigo Fuentes as an accomplice in the fraud scheme. The messages clearly show that he was aware of the financial plan and actively participated in it. He also faces civil charges for the same amount. Rodrigo visibly paled. I didn't know it was illegal. You didn't know it was illegal to conspire to defraud someone? I asked incredulously. You have a master's degree from a European university. Don't insult our intelligence by saying you didn't understand the implications of your actions. Mr. Mendez continued. Additionally, we have filed charges for fraudulent use of a credit card. Every purchase Miss Torres made for Mr. Fuentes using Engineer Morales' card constitutes a separate charge. In total, there are 17 individual charges for a total of 83,000 pesos. Valeria's father, Ernesto, stood up. His face was red. His hands were trembling. Valeria, is this true? You bought things for this man with Sebastian's money. Valeria couldn't look at him. She just nodded, crying. Ernesto turned to me. Sebastian, I know my daughter did you unforgivable harm, but please give me a chance to make this right. I will pay every peso she spent, every peso for the canceled wedding, everything. Just please withdraw the lawsuits. With all due respect, Mr. Ernesto, I said softly, this isn't about the money. I could easily absorb those losses. This is about establishing that actions like these have legal consequences, not just emotional ones. Your daughter needs to learn that she can't use people as financial tools without facing real repercussions. Patricia was now crying uncontrollably. Daniela was trying to comfort her while also crying herself. Ernesto sank back into his seat, looking as if he had aged years in minutes. There's more, said Mr. Mendez. Engineer Morales has also filed a lawsuit for damage to his professional reputation. Miss Torres shared confidential information about construction projects with Mr. Fuentes, who works at a competing firm. This breach of confidentiality could have cost important contracts. This was new to Valeria too. Her eyes widened. What are you talking about? I never did that. No. The screen changed, showing another set of messages. Here you specifically discuss a construction project I was working on for the Majestic Hotel. You gave Rodrigo details of my proposal, including the exact numbers of my budget. A week later, his firm submitted a counter-proposal exactly 5% lower than mine. Rodrigo stood up abruptly. That's a serious accusation. Without proof. Without proof. Mr. Mendez held up another document. We have emails from your firm to the Majestic Hotel, with details that could only have come from Engineer Morales' proposal. Mr. Fuentes' firm is now under investigation for corporate espionage. The hall erupted in murmurs. This had escalated beyond simple infidelity and personal fraud. Now it involved corporate espionage, a much more serious offense. One of my fellow engineers present at the event stood up. Sebastian, is that why you lost the Majestic contract? We were all confused because your proposal was superior. Exactly, I confirmed. That contract was worth 2 million pesos over 3 years. I lost it directly because Valeria shared confidential information with Rodrigo. Rodrigo tried to defend himself. That information could have come from any source. From any source, I interrupted. The messages between you and Valeria show exactly when she photographed documents from my home office. You're lucky the Majestic Hotel doesn't want negative publicity, or you'd already be facing corporate criminal charges. The situation had reached a breaking point. Valeria was crying hysterically. Rodrigo looked between furious and terrified. Valeria's parents were shattered, and the rest of the hall watched with a mixture of horror, fascination, and solidarity for me. I raised my hand for silence. I know this is a lot to process. Believe me, I lived with this for 3 months. Every day pretending to be normal while knowing the truth. Every night planning exactly how to handle this situation fairly and legally. I turned to Valeria directly. You could have stopped this at any time. Any day of these 3 months, you could have confessed the truth to me. You could have shown even an ounce of genuine remorse. But you didn't until the very last day. You kept lying, manipulating, planning. I'm sorry, Valeria sobbed. I'm so sorry, I was confused. Rodrigo and I had history. I didn't know how to handle the feelings. I made terrible mistakes, but I loved you. I still love you. No, I said firmly. You don't love me. You never loved me. You loved what I could give you. Financial stability, a comfortable lifestyle, social status. But you never saw me as a person, only as a means to an end. I took out a final document from my folder. This is the message analysis that a forensic linguistics expert conducted. He reviewed every message we exchanged over 5 years. Do you know what he found? In the first 2 years, your messages to me showed genuine affection. But in the last 3 years, especially after I proposed, they changed. They became transactional. Every I love you was typically followed or preceded by a request for money or a complaint about something you wanted. The screen showed graphs and language pattern analysis. This expert has testified in marital fraud cases. His professional conclusion is that you stopped seeing me as a romantic partner approximately 6 months after the engagement. From that point on, every interaction was designed to keep me emotionally engaged while you maximized the financial benefit. Valeria shook her head violently. That's not true. The messages don't tell the whole story. The moments we spent together. What moments? I interrupted. The dinners where you were on your phone texting Rodrigo, the nights you came home late from being with friends when you were really coming from a hotel with him, the weekends where you feigned interest in my projects while planning how to sabotage them. A mutual friend, Carlos, stood up. Valeria, you once told me Sebastian was boring and you were only with him because he was stable. I thought you were joking. Now I see it was literal. Others began to share similar experiences. A cousin of Valeria's admitted that Valeria had commented multiple times that I wasn't exciting, but that I was convenient. A former co-worker of hers revealed that Valeria had openly said she would marry me for security while keeping Rodrigo for passion. The cumulative weight of these revelations was devastating. Valeria's image as an innocent victim completely crumbled. Even the few people who had arrived doubting my accusations now saw the full truth. I want to end this presentation, I said finally, addressing a question I know many of you have. Why do this publicly? Why not handle it privately? I paused, choosing my words carefully, because Valeria's betrayal wasn't private. It involved everyone in this room. Her lies affected all of you. You spent money on gifts for a marriage that was a fraud from the beginning. You booked time to celebrate something that was never real. Some traveled from other cities. You all invested emotionally in what you thought. It was a true love story. I looked around the hall. You deserve to know the truth. Not a sanitized version where we were simply incompatible. The full truth about the level of manipulation and deceit that was occurring. Because some of you are family and friends of Valeria, and you deserve to know what she's capable of so you can protect yourselves in the future. I turned to Valeria's parents. Mr. Ernesto, Mrs. Patricia, I know this is devastating for you. I didn't do it to punish you. I did it because if your daughter can do this to someone who loved her unconditionally, what could she do to others in the future? She needs professional help. She needs to face real consequences, and you need to understand the gravity of her actions to be able to help her properly. Patricia was sobbing in Daniela's arms. Ernesto had his head in his hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red, but his voice was firm. You're right, completely right. As a father, I want to protect my daughter, but as a man of principle, I know what she did is unforgivable. The lawsuits will proceed. I won't interfere. She needs to face the consequences of her actions. Valeria turned to her father, shock on her face. Dad, you're not going to help me? Not in the way you expect, Ernesto replied in a broken voice. I'll always love you as my daughter, but I won't protect your actions. Sebastian is being more than fair by keeping this in the civil realm instead of criminal. You'll face the lawsuits, you'll pay what you owe, and you'll learn that actions have consequences. The transformation in Valeria was instant. The defiant indignation collapsed into pure desperation. She turned to me, falling to her knees. Sebastian, please, I'll ruin everything. I'll pay whatever. I'll do whatever you ask. Just please don't go on with this. For the first time in 3 months, I felt a pang of something that might have been pity, but I remembered the messages where she called me stupid. I remembered the plans to abandon me in Greece. I remembered every calculated lie, and the pang of pity evaporated. It's too late, Valeria, I said softly. The lawsuits are already filed, the attachments are in process, and more importantly, your true character is now public knowledge. You'll face the legal and social consequences of your actions. Rodrigo finally approached Valeria, helping her to her feet. He looked broken too, his initial arrogance completely shattered. Let's go, he told her softly. We can't do anything here anymore. One last thing, I said as they turned to leave. The tickets to Cancun, you canceled 2 weeks ago when you found out I knew the truth. The tickets were for the same week as what was supposed to be our honeymoon in Greece. I want everyone to know that their plan was to leave me alone, newly married in another country, while you two enjoyed a romantic vacation indirectly paid for with my money. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, one person started clapping slowly. My brother Felipe. Then Andrea joined in. Then my mother. And gradually more and more people in the hall began to applaud. It wasn't a celebration exactly. It was recognition, validation that I had done the right thing by exposing this betrayal. Valeria and Rodrigo left the hall under that applause, their heads bowed, completely defeated. The applause continued for several minutes after Valeria and Rodrigo left the hall. When it finally faded, a heavy silence remained, charged with mixed emotions. Some people looked relieved, others shocked, several visibly furious on my behalf. I approached the microphone again. I know this has been difficult to witness. It wasn't my intention to ruin anyone's day, but you needed to know the truth. Now, before you all leave, I want to thank you for coming and for your support during this situation. My mother stood up and walked to the podium. Without a word, she hugged me tightly. The gesture unleashed something inside me that I had been holding back for 3 months. I felt tears burn my eyes, but I held them in. Not here, not yet, son. My mother whispered low enough for only me to hear. I'm so proud of you. You handled it with dignity and strength. Your father would be proud too. The mention of my deceased father almost broke my composure. He had died 5 years ago before I met Valeria. I always wondered if he would have seen through her from the beginning. Ernesto slowly approached, followed by Patricia and Daniela. The 3 of them looked absolutely shattered. Ernesto extended his hand to me. Sebastian, I have no words to express our shame and remorse. We thought we knew our daughter. We were clearly mistaken. I shook his hand. Mr. Ernesto, this isn't your fault. Valeria is an adult and made her own decisions. Patricia took my hands in her trembling ones. We treated you like a son. We loved you as part of our family, and our daughter betrayed you in the most vile way possible. I don't expect you to forgive us, but I need you to know that we're horrified. I know. I said sincerely, and I appreciate you coming today despite how difficult it must have been. Daniela was the next to speak, tears running down her face. Sebastian, after this, do you still consider me your friend? I know I'm her sister, but I never knew. I never would have allowed. Of course you're still my friend, Daniela. I interrupted her. You were the only one who believed me from the beginning. That means more than you can imagine. She threw herself into a hug, sobbing. She's going to need serious help, professional therapy. I can't believe she's capable of something like that. For the next hour, several guests approached one by one. Some offered words of support. Others shared that they had had doubts about Valeria, but never imagined the depth of her deceit. Several of my friends expressed rage on my behalf, wanting to know if there was anything they could do to help. Roberto, my friend who had mentioned the 3,000 peso gift, approached with a serious expression. Brother, I need to tell you something. 2 months ago, I saw Valeria at a restaurant with a guy who wasn't you. They were very comfortable together, almost intimate. I almost called you, but she saw me and came running over saying it was a cousin visiting from out of town. I felt bad for doubting her. Now I feel worse for not telling you. It's not your fault, I assured him. She was an expert at manipulating situations. She had prepared answers for everything. Marcella, one of the friends Valeria had used as an alibi, approached looking furious. Sebastian, she used me not just once, but 4 times over the last few months. Every time she told me she was planning something special for you and needed me to lie if you asked. She made me an accomplice without my knowledge. I'm so angry I can barely speak. I understand, I said. Valeria used many people, not just me. That's why I needed the truth to come out. Carolina, my assistant from the office, had been present at the event. She approached with a thoughtful expression. Engineer Morales, I understand so many things now. Valeria's constant calls interrupting important meetings, her insistence on knowing details of confidential projects, her frequent visits to the office when you weren't there. I thought she was a concerned and loving girlfriend. It was espionage, probably, I admitted. Thanks for noticing now, even if it's late. The notary public approached with his folder. Engineer Morales, I have certified all the evidence presented today. You have official copies of everything, sealed and signed. They are admissible in any legal proceedings that may arise. Thank you, sir, I said, accepting the documentation. Mr. Mendez joined us. Sebastian, after this public presentation, I doubt Valeria or Rodrigo will have any grounds to countersue. In fact, Valeria's lawyer just called me. He wants to discuss an out-of-court settlement. So quickly, they clearly understood they have no defense. The evidence is overwhelming and now it's public knowledge. Fighting this in court would only prolong their public humiliation. What's their offer? Full payment of all canceled wedding expenses plus an additional 50,000 pesos for emotional damages. They're also willing to sign a permanent no-contact agreement and a public statement admitting guilt. I considered the offer. And Rodrigo, he's also willing to pay his share of the credit card fraud and sign legal documents, promising to cease any use of corporate information he may have obtained through Valeria. I want the public statement to be very specific, I said. Not just errors in judgment or misunderstandings, a clear admission of intentional fraud, emotional and financial manipulation, and corporate espionage. I'll communicate that to him, the lawyer nodded. And the more serious corporate espionage charges. Let me think about that. I replied. For now, focus on the civil settlement. When the hall finally began to empty, only my immediate family and a few close friends remained. We sat in small groups, talking quietly. The energy that had filled the space during the presentation had dissipated, leaving behind a collective emotional exhaustion. Andrea sat next to me. How do you feel? Honestly, I don't know, I admitted. Relieved that it's finally over, exhausted from months of pretending, sad that 5 years of my life were based on lies, but also satisfied, I guess. I did the right thing. You definitely did the right thing, Felipe affirmed, joining us. That woman didn't just betray you. She meticulously planned to destroy your life. She deserved every second of what happened today. My mother remained quiet, watching me with maternal concern. Sebastian, what comes next for you? How are you going to heal from this? I don't know yet, Mom. First, I need to close all the legal aspects. Then, I suppose therapy, time, focusing on work, eventually maybe trusting someone again. Don't let this make you cynical, she said softly. Valeria was a deeply damaged person. Not all people are like that, I know, I said, although I wasn't completely sure I believed it yet. Carlos, who had shared Valeria's comment about me being boring, approached. Brother, some of us are going to a bar. Want to come? I think you need a drink after this. I considered the offer. Part of me wanted to be alone, to process everything in private, but another part recognized I needed the support of true friends. Yes, I'll go. let me finish up here first. For the next half hour, I supervised the closing of the event. The planner approached with final documents. Mr. Morales, all charges have been processed. Is there anything else you need? No, thank you. I appreciate your professionalism throughout this unusual situation. He smiled slightly. In 15 years of planning events, I've never seen anything like it, but you handled the situation with remarkable dignity. I hope you find peace after this. When I finally left the Corona Real Hall, the sun was beginning to set. The sky was tinged with oranges and purples, beautiful and indifferent to the human drama that had just unfolded. My phone had been blowing up with messages all afternoon. Hundreds of notifications from people who hadn't attended the event, but had heard about it from others. Some messages were supportive, others from morbid curiosity, several from old acquaintances expressing shock that the perfect couple turned out to be an elaborate fraud. There were also messages from unknown numbers. I ignored most, but one caught my attention. It was from someone identifying as a colleague of Rodrigo's at his firm. Mr. Morales, we don't know each other personally, but I work with Rodrigo Fuentes. After hearing what happened today, I felt I should contact you. Rodrigo has been acting strangely at the office for weeks. Whispered calls, private meetings with our superiors. Now it makes sense. The firm is investigating the corporate espionage allegations. I just wanted you to know there are more people on your side than you imagine. I saved the message. It was useful information if I decided to press the corporate charges later. At the bar, my friends surrounded me with beers and words of solidarity. Roberto raised his glass. A toast. To Sebastian, who taught us today that defending your dignity isn't revenge, it's justice. Everyone toasted. I took a long drink of my beer, feeling the cold liquid go down my throat. Thanks, brothers. I don't know what I would have done without you these last few months. Probably the same thing, Carlos joked. You're the most stubborn guy I know. Once you decide on something, you execute it perfectly. Even your perfect revenge was methodical and engineered. That got laughs from everyone, including me. It was true. Even in my most emotional moment, I had applied logic and systematic planning. It was who I was. The night progressed with conversations about everything but Valeria and Rodrigo. My friends deliberately distracted me with funny stories, future plans, inconsequential gossip. I appreciated the effort even when my mind kept returning to the day's events. Around 10 p.m., my phone rang with a call from Daniela. I excused myself and went outside to answer. Sebastian, sorry to call so late, her tense voice began, but I needed you to know what's happening. Valeria had a complete nervous breakdown after they left. Mom had to take her to the hospital. She wasn't coherent, just crying hysterically and repeating that her life is ruined. I felt a mix of emotions at this news. Residual concern, satisfaction that the consequences were real, and guilt at the possibility of having gone too far. Is she okay physically? I asked. Yes, the doctors evaluated her. It's purely emotional and psychological. They've referred her to a psychiatrist. Dad is with her now. I'm sorry your family is going through this. Don't apologize, Daniela said firmly. She caused this. Every consequence she faces is a direct result of her own actions. Mom and Dad understand that now, even though it hurts. And Rodrigo apparently disappeared. Valeria tried to call him dozens of times after the event. He never answered. He sent a message saying he needed space to process and blocked her number. The irony was almost poetic. Rodrigo, who had conspired with Valeria to use and discard me, was now using and discarding her in her moment of greatest need. I'm not surprised, I said. People like that have no real loyalty, only convenient alliances. Sebastian, Daniela hesitated before continuing. I know this is a lot to ask, but Mom wants to know if you would consider the out-of-court settlement they offered. Not for Valeria, but for our family. This is tearing our parents apart. Dad has had to take medication for his blood pressure. Mom hasn't eaten in 2 days. I sighed. This was the part one had been dreading. The consequences extended beyond Valeria and Rodrigo, affecting innocent people I loved. Tell your father to speak with my lawyer tomorrow. I finally replied. I'll review the settlement offer. I'm not promising anything, but I'll consider it. Thank you, Sebastian. That means a lot. After hanging up, I remained outside for several minutes, watching the traffic go by. The city kept moving, indifferent to my personal drama. Millions of people living their lives, facing their own betrayals, celebrations, and tragedies. When I returned to the bar, My friends noticed my serious expression, but didn't ask. Roberto just slid another beer towards me. Everything okay? Complicated, I replied. But it will be. The night ended around midnight. I declined offers to stay at friends' houses, preferring the solitude of my own apartment. The taxi ride was silent, giving me time to reflect. Upon entering my apartment, everything looked exactly as I had left it that morning, but everything felt different. This space no longer carried the weight of kept secrets. It was no longer the place where I feigned normalcy while knowing the devastating truth. I poured myself a whiskey and sat on the balcony, looking at the city lights. My phone vibrated with another message. This time it was from a number I recognized immediately. Valeria Sebastian, I know you probably don't want to read this. I know I don't deserve your attention, but I need to say something I should have said months ago. You're right, about everything, about every accusation, every piece of evidence, every horrible thing I did. It wasn't a mistake or confusion, it was deliberate and cruel. I used you in the most vile way because I thought you were too good to notice. I deeply underestimated your intelligence and strength. Now I'm paying the price, and it's fair. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally admit the full truth. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it out of selfishness and greed. I hope you find real happiness with someone who values you as you deserve. I read the message 3 times. It was probably the most honest thing Valeria had said to me in years, but it was also too late. The right words now couldn't undo months of calculated lies. I didn't reply. I simply saved the message as additional evidence of an admission of guilt and blocked her number. That night, for the first time in 3 months, I slept soundly. The days following the event passed in a haze of legal and emotional activity. Mr. Mendez called me every morning with updates on the settlement negotiations. Valeria and Rodrigo, now represented by different lawyers, were desperate to resolve this out of court. The improved offer is as follows, explained the lawyer in our Tuesday meeting. 350,000 pesos from Valeria covering all canceled wedding expenses plus emotional damages. 100,000 pesos from Rodrigo for the credit card fraud and corporate espionage. Both will sign public statements admitting full guilt. Permanent no-contact agreement. And here's the interesting part. Valeria is willing to undergo supervised psychological therapy and share progress reports with you for 2 years. Why would I want reports on her therapy? I asked, confused. I think it's her parents' idea, the lawyer replied. A way to ensure she actually works on her problems. It also gives them closure to know she's getting professional help. I considered the offer carefully. The money had never been the main point, although recovering the financial losses made sense. The public declaration of guilt was important to protect my reputation. The no-contact agreement was essential to move on. I accept with one additional condition, I said. Finally, I want both Valeria and Rodrigo to donate 50,000 pesos each to a support organization for victims of emotional fraud. I don't want this to be just about them paying me. They need to recognize that their behavior represents a broader pattern of abuse that affects many people. Mr. Mendez smiled. That's surprisingly compassionate. After all, it's not compassion, I clarified. It's making sure something positive comes out of this horrible situation. If their money can help other victims, then at least it wasn't completely in vain. I'll communicate that. I doubt they'll object given their vulnerable position. That afternoon, while working on plans for a new construction project, Carolina knocked on my office door. Engineer, there's a lady here who insists on seeing you. She says it's urgent. Name, Patricia Torres. My first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity, and perhaps a remnant of affection for who had been my mother-in-law, made me accept. Let her in. Patricia entered looking years older than the last time I saw her. Her perfectly styled hair now showed uncolored gray roots. Her makeup couldn't hide the deep dark circles. Her hands trembled slightly as she sat down. Sebastian, thank you for seeing me, she began in a hoarse voice. I know I have no right to ask you for anything after what my daughter did to you. What do you need, Mrs. Patricia? First, I want you to know that Ernesto and I are completely on your side in this. What Valeria did was unforgivable. We're supporting the agreement you proposed, but I came to ask you for something personal. I waited in silence. Valeria is broken, Patricia continued, tears forming in her eyes. I'm not asking for pity for her. She earned it, but as her mother, I beg you to consider allowing her some form of eventual redemption, not reconciliation with you. That would be absurd, but perhaps in a few years, when she has done real therapy and shown genuine change, you could consider her, forgive her enough to let her move on without this burden. Mrs. Patricia, I said softly, the no-contact agreement means exactly that. Valeria and I will never have direct interaction again, but that doesn't mean she's condemned for life. She can rebuild her life, learn from this, become a better person. She'll just do it without me in it in any way. And if she shows real change, if in 5 years she's a completely different person, then I'll be happy for her from a distance. But our paths will never cross again. That's not punishment, Mrs. Patricia. It's a necessity for both parties. I need to move on without constant reminders of this betrayal, and she needs to rebuild herself without the temptation to manipulate me again. Patricia nodded slowly, wiping her tears. You're wiser than you have a right to be at your age. Ernesto always said you were special. I'm sorry our family lost you. I'm sorry too, I admitted honestly. I loved you all like family. That was one of the most painful parts of all this. After Patricia left, I stared out my office window at the bustling city below. Part of me felt relieved to have stood firm. Another part wondered if I was being too harsh, too inflexible. My phone rang with a message from Andrea. Lunch. We need to talk. We met at our favorite restaurant, a small Italian place we had discovered years ago. Andrea studied me carefully as we ordered. You look better, she finally observed. Less tense. I feel better, I admitted. Like I can finally breathe after months of holding my breath. Mom's worried you're repressing emotions. She says you've been too calm, too controlled since the event. I'm not repressing, I said thoughtfully. I think I processed much of the pain during those 3 months of knowing the truth. By the time the event arrived, I had already gone through the stages of denial, anger, negotiation. What you witnessed was the acceptance stage. Andrea considered this. And now what? What's your plan? Accept the agreement, close this chapter legally. Then, I don't know, focus on work. Maybe travel. Eventually, when I'm ready, maybe try to trust someone again. Therapy. I already started, I confessed. First session was yesterday. The therapist says I have a surprisingly good perspective considering the circumstances. Because you're an emotional nerd, Andrea joked. You even process your pain with spreadsheets and timelines. That got a genuine laugh out of me. Probably true. Speaking of moving on, Andrea leaned forward with a conspiratorial expression. There's someone at my work who asked about you after hearing what happened. Sophia, an architect, smart, funny, a genuinely good person. I'm not suggesting anything serious, but maybe a casual coffee when you're ready. Andrea, just think about it. No pressure, but eventually you'll want to remember that not all women are like Valeria. That night, Mr. Mendez confirmed that Valeria and Rodrigo had accepted all the terms of the agreement, including the donations to the support organization. The public statements will be posted on their social media on Friday. The payments are being processed. Everything should be finalized by next week. And the corporate espionage. Rodrigo's firm quietly fired him to avoid public scandal. They won't press charges if he signs confidentiality and non-compete agreements. Basically, his career in this city is over. Appropriate consequences, I commented. Friday arrived with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I knew the public statements would be posted during the day. I tried to focus on work, but I constantly checked my phone. At 2 p.m., the first notification appeared. Valeria had posted on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I need to make a public statement about recent events. I deeply betrayed Sebastián Morales, my former fiancé, in a calculated and cruel manner. For months, I maintained a relationship with my ex-boyfriend while planning to marry Sebastián for financial gain. I used his trust, love, and resources in unforgivable ways. I participated in corporate espionage that damaged his company. Every action was deliberate and malicious. There are no excuses or justifications. I accept full responsibility for my actions and their consequences. Sebastián deserves genuine happiness with someone who will properly value him. I am seeking professional help to address the deep-seated issues that led me to behave this way. This is my only public statement on the matter. Minutes later, Rodrigo posted something similar. I must publicly admit my participation in betraying Sebastián Morales. I collaborated with Valeria Torres in a scheme to defraud him emotionally and financially. I participated in corporate espionage that harmed his company. My actions were deliberate, selfish, and completely unjustifiable. I accept all legal and professional consequences that result. Sebastián Morales acted with more dignity and integrity than I deserve. This is my full and final confession. The comments on both posts exploded instantly. Thousands of people, many unknown to me, expressing shock, outrage, support for me, and condemnation for them. Some comments were vicious, others measured, but the consensus was universal. Valeria and Rodrigo had committed an unforgivable betrayal. My own phone exploded with messages from people who saw the posts, friends expressing relief that there was public justice, professional colleagues validating my actions, even old acquaintances from college contacting me with words of support. One message in particular struck me. It was from my old ethics professor from college, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Sebastián, I saw the news about your situation. As an ethics professor, I've seen countless cases of interpersonal betrayal. Most victims either give up silently or seek destructive revenge. You found a third way, documented justice and proportional consequences. You defended your dignity without losing your integrity. I'm impressed and proud. That's what I teach in theory, but rarely see executed in practice. That message meant more than thousands of others. Validation from someone whose professional opinion on ethics I deeply valued. That night my family gathered at my apartment for an impromptu dinner. Mom cooked my favorite meal, chicken and rice the way she used to make it when we were kids. It was comforting, in a way I hadn't anticipated. So, said Felipe, raising his wine glass. It's officially over. Legally closed, publicly resolved. How do you feel? Strangely empty. I admitted. For 3 months, all my emotional energy was focused on gathering evidence and planning the appropriate response. Now that it's over, I don't know what to focus on. Focus on you, Andrea suggested. On rebuilding your life for you, not in reaction to Valeria. Your sister is right, Mom agreed. You've spent months defined by this betrayal. It's time to redefine yourself by what you love, what you build, who you choose to be. Wise advice, I said, smiling. When did you get so philosophical, Mom? When my son went through hell and came out stronger, she replied softly. You taught me something, Sebastián, that dignity under pressure isn't weakness, that measured justice is more powerful than emotional revenge. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work with renewed energy. My company won 2 major contracts, partly because clients appreciated my professional handling of a personal crisis. One specifically mentioned, anyone who can maintain such composure under personal betrayal has the discipline to handle complex construction projects. I started socializing more, accepting invitations I had declined during my relationship with Valeria. I reconnected with old friends. I discovered new hobbies. I even finally agreed to have coffee with Sophia, the architect Andrea had mentioned. Sophia turned out to be intelligent, genuine, and refreshingly direct. During our first coffee, she asked openly, "Do you need to talk about what happened with your treacherous ex-fiancé, or would you prefer to avoid the topic completely?" "I appreciate you asking directly," I replied honestly. "I'm still processing it. It's not fair to start anything with someone new while I'm still healing." "Completely understandable," she said without drama. "So, let's consider this practice. Casual coffee between 2 professionals who could be friends. No expectations, no pressure. When and if you're ready for more, we can reconsider. Until then, just pleasant company." Her non-judgmental honesty was exactly what I needed. We had coffee twice more over the next month. Easy conversations about work, life, shared interests. There was no romantic pressure, just the gradual building of trust. 2 months after the event at Corona Real, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a handwritten letter from Ernesto. "Sebastián, it's been 60 days since that difficult day. I wanted to update you on Valeria. Not to seek sympathy, but to give you closure. She's attending intensive therapy 3 times a week. Her psychiatrist diagnosed her with narcissism with antisocial personality traits. It's a long road to recovery, if it's possible at all. She has accepted a basic administrative job, far below her qualifications, because no public relations firm would hire her after the scandal. She lives in a small apartment that Patricia and I helped her pay for. Not luxuriously, but functionally. Rodrigo, as we understand it, moved to another city to escape the social shame here. They've had no contact since the day of the event. The irony isn't lost on us. The relationship for which she sacrificed everything didn't survive the consequences of her actions. More importantly, Valeria finally seems to understand the gravity of what she did. Not in the abstract, but deeply. She has expressed in therapy and to us genuine remorse. I'm not asking you for anything. I just wanted you to know that your decision to make this public, though painful, was necessary. It forced a confrontation with reality that Valeria had evaded her whole life. You possibly saved her from herself, albeit in a harsh way. Thank you for having been part of our family. However briefly, we'll always consider you the son we lost due to our daughter's actions. With respect and regret, Ernesto. I read the letter 3 times, feeling complex emotions, relief that Valeria was seeking real help, sadness for what could have been, but above all, confirmation that I had done the right thing by setting firm boundaries and clear consequences. I filed the letter in a folder marked closure along with all the finalized legal documents from the case. That folder would go into a storage box preserved but not regularly revisited, part of my history but not defining my future. 6 months after the event, my life had found a new rhythm. My company was thriving with 3 major projects in progress. I had formed deeper friendships with people who demonstrated genuine loyalty during the crisis. My relationship with Sophia had slowly evolved from casual coffee to occasional dinners, unhurried, but with genuine potential. One afternoon, while reviewing plans in my office, Carolina announced an unexpected visitor. Daniela Torres is here. I hadn't seen Daniela since the event, although we occasionally exchanged brief messages. I invited her in. Sebastian, she began, sitting down. I came because I needed you to know something important. Valeria got engaged yesterday. My stomach tensed involuntarily. To whom? A man she met in group therapy. Another patient working on similar issues of manipulation and narcissism. It's different. He has no money, no social status. He's basically the complete opposite of what Valeria would normally look for. And you think it's genuine? Honestly, I don't know. Part of me suspects it's another role she's playing, but her therapist apparently sees it as progress. Learning to value emotional connection over material gain. I hope it's real, I said sincerely. For her sake, not mine. I also wanted to tell you, Daniela continued, that I'm getting married in 3 months. I know it's a lot to ask, but would you consider coming as a friend, not as an ex-almost brother-in-law? It would mean a lot to me and to Dad. I considered it carefully. Attending could mean seeing Valeria again, although Daniela had probably considered that. Valeria will be there, won't she? Daniela replied firmly. I made it clear to her that if you came she wouldn't, and your presence was more important to me than hers. She understood and respected that. Then, yes, I said, smiling. I'd love to be there. Daniela's wedding 3 months later was beautiful and genuine. Ernesto greeted me with a strong hug, Patricia with tears of joy mixed with residual sadness. During the reception, I danced with my mother, chatted with old friends of the Torres family, and celebrated Daniela's true love with her husband. In a quiet moment, Ernesto approached. Sebastian, seeing Daniela so happy reminds me of what we lost when Valeria destroyed her relationship with you. This could have been your wedding. You should have been my son-in-law. Things happen for a reason. I replied. Valeria and I weren't compatible because she wasn't who she pretended to be. It's painful, but true. And eventually I'll find someone genuinely compatible. Have you already? He asked with a knowing smile, looking towards where Sophia was chatting with Andrea. Possibly, I admitted, but this time I'm going slow, building genuine trust instead of falling in love with illusions. Wise, Ernesto nodded. And if you ever need a character reference, your ex-almost father-in-law will be happy to testify that you're extraordinary. A full year after the event at Corona Real, I sat on my balcony on a quiet evening reflecting on the journey. The sharp pain of Valeria's betrayal had faded to an occasional dull ache. The rage had been replaced by indifference. The desire for perfect revenge had evolved into an appreciation for appropriate justice. My phone rang with a message from Sophia. Dinner tomorrow, I want to talk about something important. I smiled, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement that was completely different from what I felt with Valeria. This was based on real knowledge, gradually built trust, compatibility tested over time. Sounds perfect, I replied. I looked at the city lights twinkling in the darkness. Each illuminated window representing lives being lived. Stories unfolding, people loving, betraying, healing, growing. My story was just one among millions, but it was mine. And it was finally being written on my own terms. Valeria's betrayal had taught me valuable lessons. That true love requires mutual honesty. That trust must be earned, not assumed. That defending your dignity isn't revenge, but self-respect. And that appropriate consequences teach lessons that easy forgiveness never could. I had faced one of the most calculated betrayals imaginable, and I survived. Not only survived, I thrived. My company was growing, my relationships were more authentic, my understanding of myself was deeper, and Valeria, according to occasional updates from Daniela, continued her difficult path of therapy and reconstruction. Whether her transformation was genuine or just another elaborate performance, I honestly no longer cared. She was a closed chapter in my book, preserved as a lesson learned, but not constantly reread. As I turned off the lights and prepared for bed, I felt genuinely grateful. Not for the betrayal, but for how I handled it. Not for the pain, but for the strength it revealed. Not for Valeria's lies, but for the truths about myself I discovered in response. Life would go on. New projects, new relationships, new challenges, but now I would face them with hard-won wisdom. The understanding that my worth isn't determined by how others treat me, but by how I treat myself in response. Have you ever had to defend your dignity against someone who deeply underestimated your strength? How did you handle a betrayal that seemed specifically designed to humiliate you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated, please give it a like and subscribe. And remember, measured justice is always more powerful than emotional revenge. Take care, and we'll see you in the next story.